Last week, I was interviewed by KOCO to talk about this winter weather that we've had in Oklahoma. So I want to talk to my service managers in HVAC and plumbing and see what would their responses be to what I said. Let's dive in.
So that winter storm, it created a busy week for so many Oklahomans, and that includes the men and women working to make sure you are warm at home.
KOCO's Olivia Hickey caught up with a couple of HVAC companies today. She joins us live. Olivia, with the weekend forecast, it is a race against the clock.
They say their phones are ringing off the hook and all techs are booked and busy.
Recording in progress.
All right, perfect. Can I just have your name, spelling, and the title you'd like to use for our story today?
Yeah, so my name's Will Yarbrough. It's just W-I-L-L and then Y-A-R-B-R-O-U-G-H, and I'm the general manager.
It's been a big cold spell here in Oklahoma. Our big question really is how this impacts HVAC companies in our area.
Yeah, so we've definitely had an uptick in calls lately, especially with the winter storm that passed through. I mean, we had about 100% increase in the amount of call volume that we've got. Typically, they've been, a lot of them have been plumbing related, but we also have had a lot of heater calls as well, just because Oklahoma homes were not exactly built to sustain these type of cold temperatures over a really long period of time. And we have had well over 100 hours below freezing. And so a lot of these guys are the kind of the unsung heroes of the HVAC and plumbing world right now, just because these are the guys that are up in the attics, they're dealing with water when it's freezing. And so they are, they're the real heroes, crawling under people's houses and making sure that, we're not having severe water damage or people aren't freezing, and getting those things taken care of. And so that's kind of the residential and commercial side of kind of what we do. And the winter storm puts a stress test on furnaces and pipes that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise had. So we did have homes that were like, everyone assumed that they were good, and then that stress test was put upon them, and we had some failures there. So I think a lot of the calls that we've been getting recently, as it relates to plumbing, have been frozen pipes. That's a pretty typical one. Anytime you have a pipe that has water in it, that water expands when it's frozen, and the structure of the pipe wasn't able to stretch, especially if it's not PEX. And so we had a lot of water calls, and then also a lot of furnace calls. Furnaces not keeping up, or furnaces that may have had cracked heat exchangers, which when you have those cracked heat exchangers, that leaks carbon monoxide into the home. And so that's definitely something that we have to get addressed like immediately in regards to that too. So we've had heaters running really high on that end too, and having a lot, whenever I say high, heaters have had a long run time that they don't typically have to have, especially in Oklahoma. Hey, Swain. So just really want to get your thoughts on how I handled that interview with KOCO. And so really one of the first things I want to talk about is, what are just some of the main issues that we encounter during the winter as far as from a service standpoint?
Yeah, so what I've seen a lot in the last week has been, heaters just breaking down. And like you said, that's due to extended run times on them. They're working harder. When you work harder, you break down faster. And it is what it is. And now, a lot of the stuff is, it's not necessarily major things, but it's some of the smaller things that are breaking down. To be honest, your average homeowner isn't waking up thinking about HVAC at all.
Right. That's 100% true. Yeah.
So it's not something that they see every day. It's not something that they think about until it's broken, until it's not working.
Yeah. So my next question would be, all right, given all that information, out of those things, especially when temperatures drop, just as drastically as they have, out of those components, which ones are more likely to fail the quickest?
So I would say the motors.
Okay.
If they're not, if they've been dormant for a little while, we had those temperatures where it was in the 70s, and the lows in the 50s. So the HVAC system is not running a whole lot. So when that system is dormant for a while, and then you put it under a lot of stress, just all of a sudden, like what was it, Friday?
Yeah.
When the temperatures really dropped, and you put it under all that stress, things are going to start to break down.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I mean, that makes total sense, because you have something that's been inactive for a while, and then it just is all of a sudden needed and becomes active. It would make sense that those things break down faster. So something I mentioned as well in the interview, and and I think I was in sales for a little bit, so I think that's something I think about whenever I think of furnaces. Is one of the biggest components of a furnace, especially when it comes time to replacing, is heat exchangers. I think I made the comment was that being one of the biggest things that we can be watching out for this winter Is that true? Do you think that could be the biggest thing, or is that something that's like, okay, well, it's important, but maybe it's not the largest thing we could be watching out for?
Yeah, so it's not going to be the most common thing that we see. By far, it's not going to be the most common. That is something that needs to be watched out for, because that is the most important safety factor of the system. You know, if you've got a cracked heat exchanger, you're allowing carbon monoxide into the airstream.
Right.
Carbon monoxide is poisonous. It could really hurt you.
Yeah.
To the point of killing you, and we don't want that for anybody. And so that's one thing. You know, when we perform our maintenances, all of our technicians have a carbon monoxide detector, and they're going through making sure there's no CO in the house, making sure the homeowner's safe, and all of that. And so, you know, while it's not the biggest thing, I think it is one of the most important things that need to be checked. You know, we don't see heat exchangers fail a ton, but the main cause of heat exchangers failing that I've noticed has been lack of airflow. And so, you know, things that we've said before, make sure that you're changing your filters. You got proper airflow, making sure the duct sizing is right, making sure the blower motor is working properly. There's no restrictions, anything along those lines. You know, if there's any air restrictions, keeping that heat in that heat exchanger area, it could cause premature failure of it.
Got you. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, especially from like the average homeowner standpoint, you know, you're going, okay, you know, make sure that filter's changed out. That's something that people can do. You know, if you notice hot or cold spots, I would imagine that's also an airflow issue. You know, so if you're noticing, hey, my filter's really dirty and I've got some pretty serious hot or cold spots, would you say you might have a higher chance to having heat exchanger issues if you're experiencing all of those things kind of together?
Well, the hot or cold spots are going to happen regardless of you know, whether you have enough airflow or not. It's just about where your airflow is going to. You're going to have hot or cold spots just due to the way that the duct design is in the home, or it's possible that you will.
Yeah.
If it's not designed correctly, if the ducts aren't placed correctly, you're going to have hot or cold spots. That doesn't mean that your heat exchanger is going to fail. You could have plenty of air, it's just not designed correctly.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I would look out for, like I stated earlier, is the filters. Make sure that you're changing your filters. That's the biggest thing that you can do to help that heat exchanger live its life the way it's supposed to, as long as it's supposed to. Get maintenance done, check that blower wheel, make sure that it's clean, check that evaporator cool, and make sure that it's clean. So just anything that restricts that airflow. And again, proper duct sizing goes into that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, you know, as far as us here at Yard Bros, you know, would you say that being, you know, I've heard you mention it several times, you know, it sounds like we were going, hey, probably being on a maintenance plan is probably the most surefire way to make sure that you're not having any premature failure on any of those components.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting on a maintenance plan with Yarbrough & Sons, with a reputable company that's actually going to check those things out. That's one of the best things that realistically you can do.
Solid. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, hey, great. Appreciate it, Swain.
Yeah, we'll see you down the road.
See ya. So James, talked last week with KOCO just about different things that we experienced during the winter. You know, I really wanted to get your take. You know, you're the master plumber here, and just what you see. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? You know, if there's anything that maybe you would add to what I said. So one of the first things I kind of mentioned on that interview was busted pipes. You know, and that being one of the main things that we deal with during the winter. You know, where do you see pipes bust most frequently in homes, especially during freezes like this?
Well, usually underneath the home, if they have a crawl space, if it's a mobile home or a trailer house, underneath there, the heat can't get to it as easily, and you got the wind blowing. Well, if you don't have them properly insulated, or if they're not, some of them need heat tape and different things like that. If you don't have that, they're going to freeze. And if it's anything but PEX, it's going to bust. You're going to have CPVC, PVC, copper, galvanized pipe. All of it will bust when it freezes.
Okay, so something I'm thinking of is whenever, you know, you're thinking about your house and you're going, okay, I don't know, are my lines PEX or not? Is there like a year cutoff where it's like, hey, PEX was typically used around this age of a home, or and lower is like they're using other building material?
It all started around 2000. Some was before. Most of the builders were still using copper back then, but some of them had transitioned over. But about 2000 is when it started really getting more and more popular with all the new builders and stuff.
Gotcha. So hey, so before we kind of move on, define PEX for me. We're using that word a lot. What exactly is it?
I can't think of the actual chemical makeup, but like PVC is polyvinyl chloride. It's softer and it can expand. It has more memory in it, to where if it expands, it will come back to its original size.
Oh, okay, good.
And
Track back.
right, so when it freezes, it expands, and this can expand over like 50 times its original size.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And then once it thaws out, it goes right back without any splits or anything like that. The only place you have to worry that I have found is if you have brass fittings or plastic fittings, they sometimes will either crack and leak after they thaw out, or it will push the part off of it. It will push the PEX away from the fitting, and that's why it does that.
Okay, yeah, so when we say PEX, we're talking about like just a completely different type of building material. It's not plastic, it's not PVC, it's its own thing.
Yes.
But the main thing is that it expands, whereas copper and other types of plumbing that were in houses maybe older than 2000s we're using more often.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, cool. One of the things that Olivia asked me about was, people getting creative with how to keep their pipes from freezing. She mentioned hair dryers and we mentioned space heaters. Is that a good idea to use any of that stuff?
As long as you're careful and watch what you're doing, make sure you're not laying in water trying to use any kind of an electricity, because that's a bad combination. That gets you hurt real quick.
Yeah.
The heater, a lot of people will even go as far as getting a heat gun and use it, and you got to be real careful because you will melt pipe real easy, whether it's PEX. The only thing, galvanized or copper, it won't, but if it's frozen, you better be ready, because if once you do get it thawed, it's probably going to have a split in it, and then you'll be calling us to come fix it.
Yeah, so and I think that's such a great way to kind of segue into my last question, which is really like, whenever we have freezes like this, what is the biggest thing that our plumbing department sees whenever we have temperatures this cold for this long?
Most of the time it's your crawl spaces, and if people leave their water hoses hooked up to their outside faucets, that is a guarantee it's going to freeze and bust. It's going to happen. So make sure you unhook all your hoses, and it's best to put the foam covers on them to keep it, and especially on the north side of the house, because the wind will blow around those and freeze them back up in there. And if your faucet has a drip, it will freeze, and then it's going to back up and freeze inside there, and it busts inside the wall.
Okay. Yeah.
And that costs you a pretty good little bit of money to have those replaced.
Yeah. So something real quick something you said just made me think of this question. Whenever people do drip their faucets, is it a good idea to drip their faucets like inside their house?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Anytime it's this cold, you want it, and the way I do mine, you do the hot and the cold, because cold will actually freeze faster or the hot will freeze faster than the cold water.
Really?
Some kind of chemical reaction, it will do that. I didn't know it for years, but that's why I do both, and I try to do half and half, and you want a stream coming out of the faucet about as big as a pencil lead.
Okay.
That right there ensures, me personally, if I do that, I've never had one freeze up.
Okay, that's great to know. So James, this is actually this question is kind of coming from somewhere that's not in our area specifically, but there have been some mayors in some cities across the South that have actually told their residents, hey, don't drip your faucets because our water system can't handle all of the dripping faucets. If someone were to come to you and talk to you about that, what would you say to someone in that situation?
Well, what I would try and do is make sure that if it's going to be below like 15 to 10 degrees, I would still drip my faucet. If it's going to be above that, most likely it's not going to freeze up, or not as likely to. So that's what I would do, is once it gets up a little bit warmer, go ahead and shut them off. That way you're not wasting water. But unless that mayor or whatever is going to pay for my pipes to be fixed, we'd have a little problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think something too is, maybe if it does get below that, would opening those cabinet doors beneath your faucet and stuff, would that be like, okay, it's not, if you absolutely had to shut it off, at the very minimum, open up the cabinet doors?
Absolutely. Okay. That allows that heat in there. A lot of times, as long as your pipes are on the inside of the insulation, you'll be fine, like that. What happens is, in building, a lot of times people just don't pay attention and they put the pipe and then the insulation. That cold air is hitting it and there's no heat getting to it because of the insulation. So that's why they will freeze on exterior walls. That way, if you can, we've had customers, and we've got one we're going to I think next week, we're going to cut cut out the sheetrock, pull the pipes forward, put insulation behind them, and then they can have their sheetrock replaced and shouldn't have another problem with them freezing when it gets like this.
Yeah. My last question for you, that's fantastic. My last question is, if someone has had their house, maybe their house is older than 2000, and they're listening to this and like, man, I really like this idea of PEX, you know, but my house doesn't seem like it's geared up for that. Can someone go from an older type of plumbing model or material to PEX? Can it be do like full repipe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of them. Copper pipe in our area, there's an acid in the ground that will actually eat the copper.
Oh, no
and
way.
It will cause pinholes in it. So there's a lot of times we will either reroute it overhead. Sometimes we're able to pull pipes underneath through the sand, and that's if it's a slab house.
Okay.
If it's a crawl space house, you can definitely replace all that very easily. It's not cheap, but it can be done. And then if it does freeze, you don't have to worry because it won't bust.
That's fantastic. James, thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Yeah. All right. Have a great one. Hey, so there you have it. I really wanted to give James, our master plumber, and Steven, our HVAC manager, a platform and a space to tell you what we talk about all the time so that you can better prepare your home for this winter weather. I hope this was informative and that you enjoyed it. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe. And if you ever have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Lastly, if you want 5-star service from Steven or James, scan this QR code in the top right and we'll get you taken care of, get you scheduled for service, install, instant estimate, scan it up in the top right, and we'll get you taken care of. Have a good one.
Yarbrough and Sons, Yarbrough and Sons.